In this video, we're going to look at the different properties of exponents that we use to simplify expressions. So our first two rules we're going to look at are the zero exponent rule and the negative exponent rule. So with the zero exponent rule, it's pretty simple. Anything that has a zero exponent is just going to become a 1. So looking at a couple examples, y to the 0 becomes 1. What you have to be careful with here is realizing that it's only what has the zero exponent that becomes 1. So in this case, the only part that has a zero exponent is the x. So nothing's going to happen to the 3. It's going to stay the same. The x to the 0 becomes 1. So your final answer would be 3. Now your negative exponent rule, get in the habit of writing all of your exponent problems as a fraction. If it's a whole number, then you can write it over 1. So to get rid of a negative exponent, because we don't want to have negative exponents, whatever has the negative exponent, including the base, it's going to switch sides of your fraction. So in this case, it's on the top, it will go to the bottom. If it starts on the bottom, then it will go to the top. So if I'm moving that to the bottom, there's nothing left on top. So we need a 1, and then the a becomes positive. So let's look at a couple examples. Remember, we can put it over 1. X to the 5th has a negative exponent, so it's going to go to the bottom, become positive, and we need a 1 on top since there was nothing left. Our next one, we can put it over 1. The only part that has the negative exponent is the y. So that's the only thing that's going to move. The 3 is going to stay exactly where it was on the top. The y comes down to the bottom, and it becomes positive. So your final answer there would be 3 over y to the 5th. So our product rule, so this only comes into play when you have the same base, so it's got to be the same letter or the same number. So in this case, they're both x's. What happens with your exponents? The base stays the same, and you add the exponents together. So let's look at an example over here. We've got the same base, they're both x's. So the base stays the same, but I'm going to add the exponents. So negative 2 plus 5 means that my exponent is going to become 3. So x to the 3rd would be your answer for that one. So now, down here, remember we're looking for like bases. So when you have these coefficients, these bigger numbers, we can multiply them, put them in the front. It would become a 12. So I've got y to the 3rd and y to the negative 5th. Become y to the negative 2nd. And then our x's. Now there's not an exponent, it has a 1. So it would become x to the 3rd. Now no negative exponents, so we need to move the y to the bottom. 12 stays on top, x to the 3rd on top, and then y squared on the bottom now is positive. So that would be your product rule. So your power rule is when you have an exponent on the inside of your parentheses and also on the outside. So how I like to explain this one is just like you would remember a problem like that where you distribute. You're going to distribute the exponent. So when you distribute, you multiply. So base stays the same, and it will become a times b. So when you've got the parentheses, you multiply. When it's base times a base, you would add them. So let's look at an example. Distribute, and it becomes x to the 6th. because it's 2 times 3. So now another example has a little bit more inside the parentheses. You have to distribute your exponent to everything that's inside the parentheses. So this 2 is going to get distributed to the bigger 2 and also to the 5. So the bigger 2 has an exponent of 1. So it's going to be 2, and we're multiplying our exponents. Oh, that should be a 2. So it's 2 and then 1 times 2. And then our y is a 5, and it's going to be times by 2. That 2 is multiplying both your exponents. So it becomes 2 to the second, and then y to the 10th as your final answer. And our last rule is the division rule. So this is when you have fraction, you've got the same letter in the top and the bottom. So what we're going to do here is we're going to subtract the exponents. Remember, it has to be the same letter, so this would end up looking as the x stays the same, and you have to subtract top minus bottom, always, with your exponents. So it would be a minus b, because a was on the top and then the b was on the bottom. So let's look at an example. Those coefficients, we have to see if we can simplify them at all. So 2 over 6 becomes 1/3. So our final answer is going to have a 1/3 in the front. So we have x to the 5th and x to the 2nd. Once you do the subtraction, you're only going to have an x in one spot. It's going to go up to the top. And we're doing the subtraction in the order top minus bottom. So our final answer looks like 1x to the 3rd over 3, because 5 minus 2 gave us a 3 exponent. And that is all of your rules for exponents.